welcome back, everyone. We will be resuming our presentations. The Threat in Cyberspace RT is going to be going first, followed by the Media and Democracy RT. But before we go back into the video, I'm passing over to Christine from the Threat in Cyberspace RT.
I'm actually going to do that for Media RT.
I'm sorry, I was given the wrong information.
No,
okay,
you're
yes.
okay.
Please go ahead with the video then, please. All right.
Hello, thank you for coming to our final symposium today. We are the Threat in Cyberspace RT. On the right corner of the presentation, there will be a QR code which is for submitting questions with smartphones, so please feel free to do so.
During our RT meetings, we discussed the following questions. What is cyberspace? What does it mean to conduct international relations in cyberspace? What is AI? How does technology impact national security? Who should be in charge of AI? And what are some social structural norms and differences regarding tech, data, privacy in US and Japan? We also had 2 debates during our pre-conference meetings. Our first debate was on whether or not the Japanese government should give free tablet to everyone. And our second debate was on whether or not AI research should be restricted by the government. We will now talk about cyberspace intersects with all of the JASC Roundtables topics, and each of our members will be talking about it. Health is a rising topic in the aging society that the world is now heading towards, including Japan and the US, and especially this year with the pandemic, health caught a lot of public attention. ICT has a great capability in enriching people's life from many aspects, and health is not an exception. The application of ICT played a major role in suppressing the spread of COVID-19. Also, supercomputers and distributed computings are some powerful tools that we have to accelerate research about this virus and other incurable diseases. In the future, ICT will make medical treatment more accessible to a wide variety of people. Such innovations as remote surgery and telemedicine are some examples. New technology such as AI and IoT are expected to reduce doctors' burden and help in making more accurate diagnosis. Cyber technology already plays a major role in medical facilities, and the importance is only increasing. So we believe reinforcing legal regulation to prevent cyber attacks to a medical facility is urgently required. On an individual level, we are more exposed to the technologies, especially in this period of time, where moving online is strongly encouraged. Many concerns to both mental and physical health are reported. We discussed the slander on cyberspace and the possibility that the people's use of cyberspace, such as social networking services, is isolating people to exclusive groups instead of connecting them. Those concerns are often overlooked. However, cyber technology's health effect on individuals are the things to be further researched and considered in the future.
Here, I want to talk about the relationship between cyber roundtable and hard power and individuals roundtable. So the right to privacy in the recent COVID-19 measures. In Japan, the US and other countries, cyber technologies are used to collect information such as behavioral history of individuals as countermeasures against COVID-19. The necessity of collecting information is understandable, since it is said to be important to know the behavioral history of infected persons at the early stage in order to stop the spread of COVID-19. However, there is a privacy issue here. Humans have a right to privacy and the freedom to act without the knowledge of others. This is very right of the individuals to be free from oppression by the state and is an essential right in a democracy. However, we have not heard much concern about privacy due to the fear of the spread of COVID-19 infection. Will our privacy be protected in the collection of information for COVID-19? Can we really believe that they won't use personal information for any purpose other than infectious diseases, whether it's done by anti-terrorism agencies like Israel or by companies like Google, as in the US? Some might say that the collection of information as an infection control measure is temporary, so we shouldn't have to worry about privacy. But I disagree. For example, the American Patriot Act that was passed in the United States after the 9/11 terrorism attack was supposed to be temporary in the beginning, but it's still in use 19 years later. When we think about it, cyber technology has the power to greatly enhance a nation's hard power, surveillance technology.
Speaking about the intersections of the environment to cyberspace, I'll raise two main points. One being about the technology of AI, and the other being about the environment of cyberspace itself. The rise of technology has made severe innovation to our lives, but at the same time, it is causing a huge burden to the environment. Now, new technology has been introduced and invested for accomplishing the SDGs, and within that, technology in cyberspace can play an important role through the use of AI. First, green AI expresses the whole movement of using AI to combat global warming, and AI can be used to monitor such emissions of hazardous substances, and especially can be used for a unified method on measuring the emissions of greenhouse gas of each country, which are agreed on eliminating by the Paris Agreement. Simulations of environment damage can be calculated by AI as well. Talking about the environment of cyberspace itself, there are concerns of stray IoTs being used to make attacks complicated, to prevent the hackers to be detected, and also for the computer resources being used for the DDoS attacks. By meaning stray, it is IoT still being able to go online, however, does not have someone managing it, meaning that there are no security patches for them. Environment in cyberspace should be under control through such regulations in the era where everything is getting connected to the internet.
The continuing development of cyberspace provides endless opportunities for how we can connect with people from all around the world. Thanks to technology today, social media and news outlets allow us to stay informed at all times. Especially in today's time of global panic, quarantines, and social distancing, cyberspace is an incredibly useful tool to stay informed and stay in touch with others. But I would argue that not all is well, since there is still more to be done and fixed regarding cyberspace's relation to media and democracy. While I won't be able to talk about all of these issues right now, I'll provide an example I was most taken aback by regarding anonymity's role in media, democracy, and cyberspace. First, anonymity means that the involved party cannot be held accountable for its actions or words. With more and more people using anonymous profiles to share their thoughts, it's difficult to identify who is authentic or who is a troll trying to stir drama but not necessarily agreeing with what they say. Because of this, conversations become more one-sided and typically end in people feeling attacked and many more feeling against the point of view opposite theirs rather than coming to an understanding. Another more obvious issue is that of fake news, as it is easy to reproduce and then spread online. Even well-known news sites can get confused by what is real on the internet, so it's important for these platforms to present accurate data. I want to conclude this section by reminding that though we have these concerns, the future is still optimistic, as we can only work towards improving our current systems. People are very creative when utilizing cyberspace to share their stories and values, and it's important for us across the world to find the balance between ensuring we have an open and secure space online.
The relationship between labor and cyberspace is currently witnessing a significant impact from COVID-19. Therefore, the relationship is rapidly changing in a present progressive form. Let's look at some of the situations regarding labor here. First, there will be further digital divide after the pandemic, with more opportunities and stability of income for jobs that are based online, as it is detached from the situations of the pandemic. Second, telework itself has issues of accurately calculating or evaluating work while maintaining healthy work styles. Cybersecurity is another obstacle, especially for companies short of money. While bigger enterprises are able to afford abundant security measures, smaller companies need government support. Regarding gender in cyberspace, we discussed that there are less gender-based jobs such as serving tea, but there is difficulty of compartmentalization of work and private life. For instance, working mothers have been struggling by focusing on work, distracted by their children and housework. Our RT also talked about harassment and cyberbullying. Although there are still cases of cyberbullying, we thought that every communication being on record could be a deterrent for sexual or power harassment.
So on this slide, I would like to talk about how cyberspace and identity and culture intersects with each other. In the digital world today, in addition to our physical offline identity, we all have our online identity. By using social media, people can create a different identity from their offline identity. Online activities are no longer separable from our real lives, and this is partially because we're constantly experiencing an on-life experience, which means that the digital online world is spilling over into our analog offline world and merging with it. Moreover, there has been some global efforts to give out digital identity to refugees and others who are lacking vital legal papers to have access to services such as health and education. However, it is said that these digital identities could leave them vulnerable to persecution or discrimination. I'd also like to point out that technology and culture directly influence each other. As culture changes, so does technology innovates, and as technology improves, the culture can change as well. Technology can bridge the cultural divide between countries, but the cultural divide is also dictated by the different technological possibilities available and what users are allowed to use. So thinking about the future, it would be necessary to consider how technology could impact the cultural divide and also international relations. Now that we've introduced all of the intersections, we would like to conclude our presentation. So far, we've looked at the relationship between cyberspace and various fields. As you can see, cyber technology has the potential to change our lives, and of course, it has both positive and negative impacts. No matter how much technology develops, at the end of the day, it's still the people who use it, and it is our responsibility to make sure that new technologies will be used in a human-centric way. We're so happy that we were able to present our findings to you today. Thank you so much. ありがとうございました。
This brings us to our next Q&A session. I see that Mr. John Shalowitz, you have a question if you would like to go ahead.
Yes, so great presentation. All the presentations have been fantastic, but this is an area that I focus on in terms of data privacy and controls. So if you look at both Japan and the US, we have very similar levels of regulatory controls around personal data, personal privacy protection. That's contrasted with Europe, which is, as we all know, much more strict. So did you all discuss in your forums at all, the similarities in privacy controls? Do you see that increasing over time? Just curious if there was any discussion around that.
I think that's a really interesting point. And not anything that we particularly talked about during our discussions, but a lot of us had mentioned the comparisons and similarities between Japan and the United States in our RT papers, since we were all supposed to write papers around our roundtables before actually getting to the conference. So that was really interesting in comparing the similarities between Japan and the United States and how we can work together moving forward, and how we can apply our methods, hopefully in other senses with other countries as well, and keeping the communication between that. So thank you for your question. And if anyone else wants to add, feel free.
Wonderful, thank you. I will, for the sake of time, move on to the next question. Mr. Joshua Sachet, you have a question?
Sure, can you hear me okay? Excellent. So I'm curious, I mean, it seems to me that, maybe the most of any of the RTs, you're kind of living what you're studying right now in this kind of very ambitious project of creating an online JASC. So I'm curious if you took some time to kind of reflect a bit on personal communication, togetherness, cultural exchange, especially in this kind of digital landscape. And how has you mentioned sort of technology as being a potential bridge of cultural divide. So how has it helped bridge any divides you may have faced coming into the conference and sort of fulfill that JASC mission, to come back to your JASC chair's question from the beginning?
Yes, thank you very much for your question. And that was very interesting because when I heard the JASC Sim 2 is going to online, like I was kind of a little bit upset about it, but I was very excited that this is really related to what we've been talking about in the conference, like cyberspace. And from my experience, JASC Sim 2 has been like very good in like communicating even through online. Like people are very active to their discussions, and in some sense, I think we were more like active trying to connect because we cannot really like go outside and do the conference. So in a sense, we really made a huge use of this platform and environment that ECs have provided to us. But of course, there's a limit to the present technology, and we cannot really, like, for example, see each other's like eyesight, where they're like being focusing to. So like we can't really get eye communication and stuff like that. So our communication is mostly like limited to our facial expression and verbal communication. So I think technology can improve those non-verbal communications in the future, but I also believe there is a limit to where technology can connect people online. So there is still need for people to like actually see each other and do business or like accelerate cultural exchange. Thank you very much for your question. And if there isn't like question at this moment, I'd like to take this moment for the announcement. We apologize for our mistakes on the QR code that was on the presentation. That was supposed to take you to the Google form so you can leave the question for after this Q&A session, but currently like it's not really working. So please use the link for the Zoom chat for sending questions after this Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Mr. Sachet, you have a follow-up question?
Oh, not a question, but I just wanted to thank all of you for what an incredible job you've done with this transition, with the fact that you're dealing with this new technology, even as sort of digital natives yourselves, right? In a way that you're sort of lucky to be in this new generation. I'm really impressed by what you've put together. This is a fantastic event. Kudos to the ECs, kudos to all the delegates. So great job, everybody, and thank you for that.
Thank you as well. As we say multiple times during this presentation, we would not be able to do this without the support of our incredible alumni network and with ISC and IEC. At this point in time, I will move on to the next RT, and now I will actually pass over to Christine. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. So before we do start our presentation, I will be sending a link to a poll in the Zoom chat right now. And I ask that you guys take 1 minute to fill out an answer to our question in one word. Oh, hello. In one word, how would you describe your relation with news media right now? We will go until, let's say, 55. and we will be displaying a cloud text mosaic of your answers at the end of this, the presentation. Thank you.
While those answer the poll, I will also then pass on to let the presentation begin. Thank you very much, Scooter.
Hello everyone, we are Media and Democracy RT. I'm Mizuki Matsumura.
I'm Ayakato.
I'm Keisuke Wada.
I'm Christine Heaton.
I'm Genta Tango.
And I'm Shiho Hijiwa.
So first of all, we want to share what topics we have discussed so far. This is a concept map of our keywords. We covered much content related to both social media and mass media. Besides, we widely defined media, so we talked about textbooks as well. We compared how textbooks explain World War II. And we found how difficult to educate students with neutral perspectives because the content is different in each country. Also, COVID-19, our presidential election, and BLM are hot topics these days. So we discussed the relationships between media and them. We also did FT with Imai-san, who is our JASC alumni. And he was our vice president of NHK. We learned media history and journalism from him. Do you know what those numbers present? 390 million. It means there are 390 million users on Twitter. How about 48 million? The number indicates how many bot accounts there are on Twitter. In today's presentation, we will talk about our opinions about media and democracy. We will talk about background, analysis, insights, challenges, and suggestions. Our focus is the influence of media to individuals.
Next, I will talk about the background. We picked up 5 points. The first point is social media has become one of the informational infrastructures. As we can all agree upon, social media is now playing an indispensable role in the society of 2012. Social media provides a large amount of information, which may surpass traditional media. Also, we can easily spread information to all over the world and trigger world-scale action, such as BLM movement and the Arab Spring. The second point is drastic development of informational technology. Analyzing big data which contains various information such as demographics or personal information. Information that users get is tailored to one's preferences, and that bear reading logs and are reutilized for another analysis. This circulation of information reinforces the accuracy and precision of the big data use. Third point is undeveloped legal system and social norms on the expanded space of speech. Legal system and social norms aren't established enough. Regulating the media is always controversial because it may violate the freedom of press and speech. So many countries or societies struggle with making an environment where the media plays appropriate roles. The first point is lack of media literacy. There isn't enough media literacy education. People are information hungry and gullible, easily believing what the media says without checking whether it is biased or accurate. Many people still don't truly understand what they casually post on social media can have huge impacts on society. The last point is social instability as potential social division. Society is potentially divided, especially in America. The division between liberals and conservatives has been more and more serious. It can be said that the media and society promote the division of each other.
Now it's the time to think what is actually going on in the society of 2020. So we did analysis about the current situation. What we found is the three things. The first thing is the divergence between the development of informational technology and people's literacy on media and informational technology. Since Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press in the 15th century, we have been developing technology with super rapid speed, especially the media-related technology. As media is the means that people send or receive information, this rapid growth in technology encouraged the rapid change of society as well. However, although the technology and society have changed significantly, our ability to appreciate the media did not accompany with it. Still in 2020, most people are struggling with appreciating media due to the lack of media literacy. The second thing that we found is the flood of information. What I mean by that is the people are having difficulty in determining true or false. As we have an enormous amount of media platforms, including traditional media and SNS, now information around us is also an enormous amount. In such a situation, it is significantly hard to distinguish whether what you are seeing right now on your phone is accurate or not. The final thing that we found out is the bloated space of speech on undeveloped legal system. Until a few decades ago, there's a fair way for us to advocate or our opinion. In fact, not so many people were even allowed to advocate their own opinion. Unlike those times, now people have the ways and technology that each individual can raise their voices. That is definitely a good thing. However, it also means that there's no longer limitation or controlling systems on SNS. Now, there's a lot of bots, BOTS, which are SNS accounts that were intentionally made by specific organizations or figures for specific purpose, like spreading propagandistic opinion. Also, there's no specific laws or agency that can control such situation. Thus, media in today's society goes uncontrollable and super chaotic.
So based on the analysis of the current situation and the background, I'd like to suggest 3 points of insight and challenges that the current world is facing. So first of all, there can be extremization and the polarization. So SNS can create significant mobilization of public opinion when going to the same direction or uniting under one certain ideology. So looking at the example of the Arab Spring in 2011, or BLM movement in 2020, the mass people were strongly united under a simple but strong belief. As you can see from these two examples, this nature of SNS is not necessarily a shortcoming, but it could easily fall into a bad result. Uniting under one certain ideology would make us moderate or neutral opinion obscure. And so just looking at all the movement on SNS would not lead to a correct understanding of public opinion. The nature of SNS, that it connects people who have the same belief, is not always consistent with the coexistence of different opinions. And secondly, media coverage distortion problems. So media coverage necessarily includes the perspective of the media institutions. That is not an exception in the present time, or even more strengthened. For example, BLM protest started in Minneapolis. Looters coverage was distorted and leading to more looters. So originally it was only people who wanted to purchase milk to protect themselves from the pepper spray. However, as this scene was reported and spreaded, the way it was reported changed and leading to a distorted image of the incident. So as the space of speech got even more enlarged and not well organized, transmission of information has become even more easier, fast, yet not well checked. And lastly, there is a necessity for redefinition of public opinion. So as we explained in the earlier part, the bloated space of speech on undeveloped legal system has made it difficult to correctly observe and understand the public opinion. Accompanied by the nature of SNS that it obscures moderate or neutral opinion, there can be several interpretations of public opinion these days. So in addition, as informational technology has developed drastically, the variables that the mass people are affected when forming and expressing their opinion has exponentially increased. And as you can see from the case of the 2016 US presidential election, the mass advertisement campaign and utilization of Twitter for mobilization of public opinion clearly shows the transfiguration of public opinion. So given the increase in relevant actors in the space of speech and the development of informational technology and the data science, it is of absolute necessity for the redefinition of public opinion. So as a whole, while the space of speech has advanced significantly as media-related informational technology developed, the space of speech and public opinion, which is the most important fundamental of democracy, has become diversified yet unstabilized. And we're moving on to the suggestion part.
So our suggestions are threefold. We will first focus on the issue of social media campaign losing meaning. We can approach this problem by three measures. The first measure is the adding explanation of the initial purpose. Letting hashtags spread without explanation or statement of purpose may dilute or distort the importance of the movement itself. The second measure is showing the ways to physically support the campaign, including the donation sites, signing petitions, and protest location in your community. The third measure is to implement the function on social media that brings users directly to information about the organization that the movement is centered around. This can be done by directly users that interact with a certain hashtag on information about this central organization and those involved. So let's say if you click on the hashtag of BLM, that will lead you to the Black Lives Matter Foundation info and an overview of the movement.
Another issue we can identify is how we can reduce the spread of fake news. The fundamental solution we can all strive for is raising our own media literacy, or how we navigate the news media atmosphere over the internet today. We as a species are inclined to share and consume ideas that align with our own. How we can combat this is by considering the objective truths and ideas that are justifiably different from our own. We can accomplish this by implementing a rewritten social media algorithm that brings the opinions of others more often alongside the objective truth, but also acknowledge the existence of bots on social media that may skew public opinion and understanding. Thus, a more widespread use of fact-checking statements to prevent quick spread of false information is necessary. And finally, warn others of sensitive content to protect vulnerable communities online. Our final suggestions seek to resolve the issue of widespread polarized media consumption. If you find your newsfeed on social media is comprised solely of news articles from a certain political or social leaning, then we suggest you seek out articles that lean towards the center or other side of the spectrum more often. This also encourages those who interact with media to form their own educated opinion with multiple sources from various leanings, rather than having an opinion that can appear biased or skewed. Finally, we must all come to an understanding that using solely social media for news events and consumption of news is not the most factual way to receive news, and that using other news media technology, such as televised news broadcastings, newspapers, and radio alongside social media would promote a more healthy relationship with yourselves and news media. As a parting note, we would like you all to turn to the poll that we have linked in the Zoom chat right now. And we pose the question to you now in one word: how can you improve your relationship with news media? Thank you all for listening.
So those with questions, please do private message me. But before I turn over to a Q&A directly, I will pass back to Christina.
Perfect. Thank you so much again, Maddie. So I would like to share with you the results of our poll from the beginning of our presentation. Would I be able to screen share at all? Or would it be best to send it to someone? Ah, there we go. Thank you. So this is the resulting mosaic from everyone's results. And surprisingly enough, the most popular single word that you all submitted to describe your relationship with news media is critical. So I want us to just take a second while we are thinking about our responses to the second poll. Why would it be critical exactly? And why are distrust, interactive, and close also popular answers? At this time, we will also be entertaining questions, and I will also be linking the form for questions if we run out of time in the Zoom chat right now as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Christine.
I think I see a hands up.
Is it okay? Because that's me.
Oh, yes. Yes, Fabiola, please go.
No problem. Hi, this is Fabi from the Labor and Work Culture RT, the Amadeli side. I really enjoyed that presentation. I'm wondering, so a lot of people say that cable news, for example, is very biased and very polarized in America. And a lot of people think that social media, especially Twitter, because a lot of people are posting actual things that happen, like footage of it. So to what extent do you think that social media, like itself, and people posting different things, especially now with the Black Lives Matter movement, and police brutality, all of that, to what extent do you think that that is more credible than things like CNN, Fox News, NBC, etc.? And there doesn't have to be any one definitive answer.
Thank you. Mr. Slashay, you have another question.
Sure. Thank you all for a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I'm curious, you've told us some really interesting things about the kind of general shape of media consumption and democracy, right now in general. I guess I'm curious about the very acute question of media consumption during the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially media overconsumption. So I've heard sort of anecdotally about cases of sort of media paralysis and kind of media exhaustion, sort of being stuck in your house and only having, scrolling endlessly through, social media and news sites, and creating even a sense of sort of cynicism or potentially accelerating this process of mistrust, right? So I'm curious if you talked at all about that connection and this relationship between media overconsumption and even particularly like forms of radicalization are one potential outcome of this, whether it's sort of QAnon in a very, American kind of radicalization, but if you've reflected on the very specific relationship between current media overconsumption and democratic values.
Thank you. And then I will answer to the question that Fabi asked us first. And then, so you ask, like, in some, what, like, in what way, like, SNS can be more credible than those of the traditional cable TVs or traditional media, right? And then what we thought is, like, the SNS is the, for everyone's app, so everyone can register to it, and then everyone can use it, even, like, it doesn't matter where you are living in, except, like, China, or those kind of, the governmental authority prohibiting to use it. So in that's why, like, everyone, so we can know the local stuff, or true reality, what is going on at the, actual place, or actual, actual place, like, in traditionally the media the traditional media use those kind of footage with their biased opinion, right? And then, as you said, Fabi, like, they are using the footage from Twitter in some, like, because they have some biased opinion. So the problem is, like, it's not about the Twitter itself, but how the traditional media use those kind of footage. So the Twitter itself is the great tool for us, that we can know what is actually going on the local area, even in the area that we cannot actually go to, like Iraq or Iran, those kind of places as well, right? So that's my answer to the first question. And then, does anyone have the answer to the another one, or?
So unfortunately, I will have to actually stop it there. We are now at our second break. Those watching on YouTube Live, the same as the first one, in the description, you will find a link to the third part of this stream. And same as before, we will go back to the slideshow during this break. We will be done with the break at 9:30 p.m. EDT, 10:30 a.m. JST. Thank you all so much.